Welcome back, Summoners, to another ProGuides patch rundown. My name is Christoph, and today I'll be going over the changes made in patch 9.1. I'll make sure to cover all the details, including a tier list for each lane that was made by our in-house analysts and partnered pro players. Also, for the first time ever, we'll be adding a C tier to every single tier list from now on. This change was made so that we can provide more accurate information and allow our viewers to get a better understanding of each champion's power level. So let's get right into it. Nasus has always been a great pick in the top lane for lower ranking players, but has struggled to find success for higher ones. Nasus will be receiving a buff to his main damage ability, Siphoning Strike, which now grants him an extra 6 stacks per champion, large minion, or large monster kill. Although the amount of stacks he gains has been increased slightly, it still doesn't help Nasus get through his weak points in the game. High elo players will still be able to bully this poor guy in the early laning phase and deny him from becoming that unstoppable split push threat. However, these buffs may allow Nasus to see a little bit more play in the jungle, but will still be unviable in high elo. The jungle meta in Challenger consists of champions who will demolish Nasus in the 1v1, such as Camille, Xin Zhao, and Graves. Nasus will be moved up to our top lane B tier list this patch, but is definitely cutting close to the C tier. Ornn has had a very solid track record in competitive play and has shown strong results in the top lane. For a while, he's had no losing matchups, making him the most solid and safe top laner to choose in any scenario. However, Ornn has been struggling quite a bit in the current meta and is one of the weakest champions there is. Ornn will be receiving a series of changes this patch, which will convert most of his power into his passive and W. The first change made will be to his base stats. Ornn will now have more health growth, HP regen, bonus HP regen, armor growth, and base attack damage. His passive Living Forge has been completely reworked to now give more value to his team. Ornn now gains 10% additional armor and magic resist from items, and at level 13 he can upgrade his own items for free. In addition to that, Ornn can also upgrade his allies' items from level 14 onward by getting within 600 range and clicking on them. His old passive, which allowed his allies to upgrade their items for 1000 gold at the shop, has been removed, but a few more items have been added to his upgradable list. These items are Frozen Fist, Youmuu's Wraith Blade, Might of the Ruined King, and Luden's Pulse. Ornn's Q, Volcanic Rupture, will be receiving a buff to its mana cost, but will have its base damage and slow nerfed. To compensate for the damage nerfs on his Q, Ornn's W, Bellows Breath, is getting a mini revamp to convert most of his power onto this ability. Bellows Breath will no longer shield Ornn, but will grant him the unstoppable status and have its cooldown reduced by 2 seconds. His W will also do a ton more damage and have its self-slow reduced by 15%. Furthermore, Ornn's E will have a small nerf to its mana cost, but will grant his Q a mini duration buff if he casts his Searing Charge while the pillar is about to expire. Lastly, Ornn's ultimate, Charge of the Forge God, will have its CC nerfed, but will still do a great job at engaging fights. Due to the many buffs and changes made to Ornn in 9.1, we will be placing him in our top lane A tier list this patch. It's hard to say how good this champion will be due to the removal of his W shield, but he will definitely be stronger than before. There are a lot of changes to our top lane tier list for patch 9.1 due to the addition of our brand new C tier. Most of our tiers have a lot of changes made to them, but take a close look at our S tier. Cassiopeia and Riven have been added due to their recent performance and win rate in high elo. Although Cassiopeia is an unusual pick, she is extremely oppressive in the top lane and will help you dominate your opponents with ease. As always, pay close attention to our A and S tier champions, but keep in mind that the B tier champions can also bring pretty good results. On to the jungle. Sejuani hasn't been a very good pick in solo queue recently, but her competitive record during the Kespa Cup has shown just how strong she actually can be in the right hands. Sejuani will be receiving a series of changes this patch that will reduce her crowd control but increase her damage to make her less dependent on her allies. Firstly, Sejuani will be receiving buffs to her base stats, which will include her health growth, base armor, armor growth, base magic resist growth, and attack damage growth. She will also see some changes to her passive, Fury of the North, which will now give her 20 plus 25% of bonus armor and magic resist instead of the previous flat amount. Sejuani's Q, W, and E will be seeing huge buffs that focus on damage and small nerfs to her CC. Sejuani will be an extremely strong jungler next patch and will easily be on our S tier list for 9.1. Get ready, Sej mains, the queen of the jungle is back and more banned than ever. Jungle still remains as a powerful role going into Season 9, and champions who excel in dueling are still at the top. Our S tier consists of Elise, Graves, Kha'Zix, Xin Zhao, and Sejuani. These 5 champions will bring you the best results during your Season 9 placement matches, and we strongly recommend every jungler to pick them up. Other junglers in our A tier are without a doubt very powerful, but are a notch below our S tier in terms of consistency. Pick a handful of these champions and I'm sure you'll be dominating your opponents during your placements. Jace has been a solid pick for solo queue in the current meta and will stay that way going into Season 9. He will see a small change to his E acceleration gate, which will not ignore movement commands if his Shock Blast is cast beforehand. Jace will remain in our mid lane A tier list for patch 9.1. Katarina is another mid laner who has been a strong solo queue champion and will stay that way going into the new season. Her E, Shunpo, will see a few changes to allow her to feel more fluid during the laning phase. Katarina's Shunpo now casts immediately upon teleporting and also allows her to buffer her Gunblade active to fire after the Shunpo's cast time completes. Katarina will remain in our mid lane A tier list for patch 9.1. The mid lane tier list has seen a lot of changes due to our addition of the C tier for this patch. In the S tier, we have 6 champions instead of our usual 5, which consists of Aatrox, Cassiopeia, Gallia, Irelia, LeBlanc, and Lissandra. These 6 champions are a tier above the rest and will give you the competitive edge you need on your opponents during Season 9. We especially recommend you try Galio and Lissandra because they are oppressive picks that are extremely easy to learn. Try them out in your next few games and the results will speak for themselves. On to ADC. Kalista is one of the weakest ADCs going into Season 9 and will most likely stay that way for a while. To make sure that Kalista can become viable without also being a monster in competitive play, she's going to be receiving a few changes to her core strengths. Riot has decided to shift her strengths a little bit less team-oriented. Kalista will have her base stats increased, followed by a buff to her Q Pierce's damage. Her W Sentinel will no longer gain extra damage when her Oathsworn ally is nearby, and her E Rend now does 50% damage to epic monsters. Even with these buffs, Kalista will still remain in our ADC C tier list for patch 9.1. Jinx is easily one of the most fun ADCs in the game, but has been struggling to see a lot of play in the current meta. To help Jinx during the mid to late game, her W Zap will now have its cast time decreased, so it feels a little bit more fluid. Do keep in mind that her W's cast time will scale with her attack speed, so it's important to build those Zeal items. Jinx will remain in our ADC A tier list for patch 9.1, but is leaning closer toward the B tier. Sivir is one of the safest ADCs in the game who can deal a reliable amount of DPS during the mid to late game team fights. She's had a decent stance in the current meta, but will be receiving a small buff to help increase her win rate. Her Q Boomerang Blade will no longer decrease its damage after hitting enemy champions. Hitting that Dream Q on all 5 enemies in a teamfight can deal a devastating amount of damage now, and will surely help her become a bigger threat. Sivir will remain in our ADC A tier list this patch. Vayne is arguably going to be receiving the biggest buff out of all the ADCs this patch. Her mid to late game teamfighting would become a lot better due to her receiving buffs on her ultimate Final Hour. Final Hour now reduces Tumble's cooldown by 50% while it's still active. This is pretty scary. During a late game teamfight, Vayne will be stealth after every auto. This is a huge buff and will make her an even bigger threat late game. So beware of Vayne this patch. Vayne will now be moved up to our S tier ADCs this patch and is someone you should really look out for. Xayah has recently seen a lot of S tier appearances in our previous tier list due to her enormous amount of power with her partner Rakan. However, with the addition of a C tier, we've now moved Xayah down to our A tier ADCs and will likely stay that way going into Season 9. She'll be receiving a slight buff to the duration on her E in this patch, but to us it's a bit of a negligible buff. There were a lot of ADC changes this patch, but the list remains pretty similar to patch 8.24b. With the addition of our C tier, we've displayed a more accurate power ranking for our ADC tier list and can help you get a better understanding of each champion's power. In S tier, we have Draven, Ezreal, Jhin, Lucian, and Vayne. Make sure to try some of these champions out in your next normal game. Also, tell all the Vayne mains out there, just remember, Vayne spotting still exists and will be counting every time you roll yourself into an early grave. The support tier list remains very similar to last patch, excluding the addition to our new C tier list support champions. There were no major support changes and the power picks remain the same. In S tier, we have Alistar, Morgana, Nami, Pyke, and Thresh. These 5 champions are a level above the rest and will bring you the best results in solo queue. Now onto some of the runes. Hail of Blades has historically failed to find a decent stance in the meta. If you were a champion who cared about attack speed, then you usually wanted to take precision instead of domination. Rune stats somewhat solved this tension but left a second unaddressed. Champions who want to fight with quick bursts of attack have reset abilities that overlap with one of Hail of Blades' empowered attacks. To solve this problem, Hail of Blades' attack speed will now be a flat 110% at all levels, and auto-cancels no longer consume a stack of its passive. It's safe to say that the Celerity rework has been a failure in the current meta. With its frequent users being less than 10, it will be receiving a slight buff to its movement speed bonus to help increase its strength. Shield Bash has been one of the best additions to the game since Season 9 preseason. Tanks are loving this rune due to its maximum HP scaling. However, Riot wants this rune to be a good option for all shield users. Shield Bash will be receiving a damage buff to allow other users to deal a decent amount of damage with this rune without having to stack bonus HP. As well, there's a change in rune stats. There's going to be a 1% increase in attack speed. That's pretty nice. That's it for our patch 9.1 rundown. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like and comment. Also, subscribe to our channel to be notified for our next video. If you're interested in getting better at League of Legends, check out ProGuides.com, where we have courses with pro LCS players designed to get you better at the game. We also have a placement course that you should consider watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them below and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the Rift.